Hey everyone, Jason from Alphatone Audio back again. Today I've got an assembly video on the new Squareplug SPS7 plug. Now, by all means, go check out my other two videos. I did one on the intro for the SPS6 and SPS7, where I kind of showed it in along with the other Square plugs that are out right now. And then I also just did an assembly video for the SPS6. So even if you just want to do the 6 or the 7, I suggest you watch both videos, primarily just because this is the same part. I mean, as far as the actual plug part on these plugs, they are identical between the SPS6 and the SPS7. The only part that is different is the outer body on this, the shell for the plug, where you have a lot more room on the 7 than you have on the 6, as it is designed for multiple cables to go in and out of that plug. So today I'm just going to do a standard stereo or insert style cable, and I have 2 strands of Mogami 2314. I've got these stripped back about 3/8 of an inch. This is going to be pretty tight assembly on these, but I think it's going to be a little bit easier than the older alternatives that I had been using for the TRS stubby straights. So again, I got 2 strands of 2314, and again, just go about 3/8 of an inch to start. Never hurts to go a little bit long just to start, because you can always trim these conductors back as you go. And I was going to put these side by side, make sure that our grounds are lined up, and I'm going to go this way because I'm going to twist to the right, and I'm just going to braid these together nice and tight into one, and then however much I initially cut the outer jacket back, I'm going to take about half of that off. So we end up with about 3/16 stripped and 3/16 not stripped. Don't worry, they came apart. Once I solder it together, it will certainly not move. Hit that one more time. There we go, nice and clean. Strippers are getting a little bit dull. It's probably time for a new pair. Okay, and once I get to this point, I'm going to tin everything up. You can be generous with the solder when you go to tin the shields together, because you want to make sure that they actually stay together. Okay, and on the actual plug, you can see you've got, this is the very large tab is going to be for the shield or the ground. The smaller tab on the top is going to be for the ring, and then you don't actually have a tab for the tip. You just have this little well here, which is fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be pretty generous here when I tin the shield. If for no other reason, it's just like it's a big chunk of metal, and it's going to soak up a lot of heat out of the iron. Just make sure that's clean. And then on this little well here, I'm just going to fill it with solder. I'm going to get it nice and hot to start. And you just have a little blob of solder right there in the middle. I'm not going to tin the ring right now because I want to feed one of the conductors up through it. So then you're just going to start to get organized on where you want everything. So when you go to solder, it's as easy as it can possibly be. So you can see once you start to line this up from this view, I don't need it very long at all. In fact, I still think I've got a little bit, because what you want to do is when you cut the outer jacket back on your instrument cable here, you want this to end up being very close to this solder tab right here. So there's not a whole lot of distance between where you cut the outer jacket and the edge of this solder tab here, because then it's going to make sure that you're going to get you don't have any of the conductors hanging out of the end of the plug. You're just going to have the outer jacket. So you'll get a little bit better longevity out of the cable that way. So I think I actually want to go a little bit shorter on these conductors. I'm going to cut certainly my center one. I want to strip it back a little bit more. And this is where you want to take your time. And if you cut it back and you get some exposed copper there, then don't be afraid to go back and make sure that all the exposed copper is tinned. You can just bring it back in and just take your time, size it up. This is where you get really good cables made. Take time to make sure that your prep work is the best that it can possibly be. And I think this is about where I want it. And of course the ground is really, really long. The ground is only going to end up being like, it's only going to overlap by about 1/8 of an inch. Definitely have a little bit on the short side, because we don't want to do is start running up against, too far into the plug, and then you're going to ground it out on the tip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pre-assemble just a bit, and I'm going to run the ring up through that. You see my center connector still just a hair long. Okay, so I'm going to run that up through there. And again, same thing here. We always want to make sure that the unstripped part of the conductor, you want that insulation going all the way up to the tab. You just don't want a lot of exposed wire hanging out inside of your plug. And I'm going to go in a very specific order. I'm going to go ahead and do the center, or the tip, first. And I've got plenty of solder in there already, and I was generous when I tinned the tip, so you pretty much should just have to heat this up. And I'm just going to rotate that in. And that is done. And I've got a lot of extra wire now, so I'm going to trim it down just a little bit. And you can always give it just a little squeeze with your needle nose, get that flushed up. Just so that exposed wire is flush with the top of the tab. And then hit that with the soldering iron. And then last but not least, have the ground. Get that in place. Being a little stubborn, that's okay. Take your time. I usually use helping hands for something like this, but mine broke, so I'm just kind of winging it. And a little bit of solder. And we're good. So we're going to end up looking something like this. Assembly, super straightforward. Just going to take our insert, put it in the plug. Maybe actually easier to feed the cables through first. Bring it up. And screw it on, and that's it. And that is your SPS7 assembly. Again, no strain relief on this cable, but I don't really stress strain relief too much, or the lack of strain relief on cables I can use my pedal board. I just don't think they're quite as vulnerable, or they get beat up quite as much as like an instrument cable. But so, I mean, if you're worried about that there's no strain relief on this cable, just do the best assembly job you can, do the best soldering job you can, and those solder joints will last you for years to come, and you shouldn't have to worry about it. So once again, go back and check out the SPS6 and SPS7 intro videos. Check out my SPS6 assembly video. This was the SPS7. If you found this helpful, which I certainly hope you did, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.